The advice is pretty simple, which is just hold on to assets. Whatever the short-term gain is that you might realize by selling something, oftentimes is going to pale in comparison to what the long-term benefits and long-term gain could be.
Welcome to the Shine Strategy Podcast, where entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business owners are getting visible and changing the world. I'm your host, Heather Burgett, an award-winning publicist, entrepreneur, and business mentor. Today's show is sponsored by PR Stars. For more inspiration and Shine strategies, head over to shineinsiders.com now for my free masterclass so that you too can get visible and go from local to global. Hey, Shine Insiders! Are you tired of being the best kept secret in your industry? Well, I have a solution for you, and it's called free publicity, and we can actually get it for you fast. Go ahead on over to podcast.theshinestrategy.com. Over there, you're going to find my free pitch template, and that's going to help you get into major newspapers so that you can stop struggling to find your clients. Let them find you. We also have all of our show notes over there. You'll also see how to join my community and my upcoming free masterclass. So again, that's podcast.theshinestrategy.com. All right, everyone, let's dig in. Hello, Shine Insiders. Thank you for being here with us today. We have with us a wonderful guest, Steve Olsher. He is known as the world's foremost reinvention expert. He's famous for helping individuals and corporations become exceptionally clear on their what. That is the one thing that they were created to do. He's the New York Times bestselling author of What is Your What? Discover the One Amazing Thing You Were Born to Do, an international keynote speaker, chairman and co-founder of Liquor.com, and an in-demand media guest who has appeared on CNN, Fox Business, and many other national outlets. He's a coach and consultant who will propel you forward in attaining your personal or business objectives. He's helped tens of thousands of people across the globe achieve their desired results. So I'm so happy to have you here with us today, Steve. Thank you for being here.
Yep, appreciate you having me on.
And I love hearing too, you said you've been mentored by, interviewed, and worked alongside many of the world's most influential people. So just right out of the gate, can you give us maybe one person or one anecdote of someone you've worked or rubbed elbows with that gave you some inspiration?
Well, there's been famous and not so famous people, right? So one of my, certainly one of my biggest influences has been my grandfather.
Oh.
And we were able to work together for a handful of years before he passed. So definitely learned a ton from him. I mean, no doubt at all about that. And if we're going to get into sort of more known people, I mean, I've been privileged to put on some pretty awesome events and have people like Brendan Burchard, Vishen Lakhani, and many others take the stage, and been able to develop real relationships with people like, Russell Brunson spoke at my event, Internet Profits Live, and we've been doing the New Media Summit now for quite some time. And anyway, just lots of people. I mean, I've of course hired coaches and mentors and so on, people like Steve Harrison of Quantum Leap and others over the years, and been involved with mastermind groups. I'm in a group right now with Roland Frazier and Darren Hardy and others in that small group. So yeah, kind of run the gamut.
That's amazing. And how would you say that's impacted your career when you've come together with people like this?
Well, it really just boils down to thinking, right? I mean, that's the bottom line. Is it just changes your thinking? I think, I know that so many of us just hit the ceiling of our own limitations. A friend of mine, JJ Flassane, says you cannot grow beyond what you do not know, and it's so true. And that's just for me, I think, one of the biggest advantages and benefits of surrounding myself with people who have done so much. I don't want to say more, but let's just say so many different things than I have. that whatever it is that they've done typically rubs off on what it is that I want to do or am doing in pretty tangible ways.
Yeah, and it's like you get a little bit of that mojo when you're in the room with those people. And I can't remember where I heard this, but somewhere there was a quote or something about that your income or salary is basically the average of the five closest people that you surround yourself with. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah. Yeah. I actually have in my book, What is Your What? I talk about the circle of four, which is certainly a very similar concept.
Yeah. So it's, and I love that you're talking about, surrounding yourself with these people. That's for me as well. This has been a game changer doing this podcast because working in LA and Hollywood, I've rubbed elbows and worked with a lot of well-known or famous or very successful people. But now getting to sit down and have conversations with everyone is just like, I think it's really taking things to the next level. So it is a powerful thing to have that interaction with people that, you look up to or aspire to, or that are also, like helping us level up our game. And I love that you also mentioned your grandfather, and my grandfather was very inspirational to me as well. What do you think the biggest thing is you learned from your grandfather?
There are countless things, but I will say that one of the main takeaways, if you will, is he was always one to stand up for what was right. And there were times where he would, let's just say, he wouldn't exactly rub people the right way, and there were some folks who stood up against him and would say not so nice things and just, all around be kind of jerks, really, when you come right down to it. And one of the things that he said to me before he passed was, you have to learn to forgive quickly. And it was a really interesting statement from him, just knowing that there had been people that had really hurt him over the years. But I guess the reality is that it's up to you whether or not you carry that with you. And something happens, and whether or not you hold on to that is really a personal choice.
Yeah, and that's actually our recent episode where I talk about losing my father, who recently passed. That was a big theme of, the life lessons I learned around acceptance and forgiveness. So it is absolutely, a powerful and transformational thing to be able to do, and not just forgiving other people, but also forgiving ourselves, because sometimes we're harder on ourselves than anyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and look, I'm not going to sit here and say that everything that I've done in business has been all sunshine and roses, because it definitely has not. And there are a lot of regrets that I have, and a lot of mistakes that I've made. And there are times where it's hard to pick yourself up off the floor and just say, you got to keep moving here. But fortunately, as an entrepreneur, I'm wired in a way where you just got to keep going, and definitely regrets and definitely things that I could have done better and differently. But at the same token, you just can't. If you hold on to that too tightly, it just prevents you from really holding on to anything else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that there's the sort of idea that when you're holding on to a grudge or bitterness, really the only person you're hurting is yourself. So being able to let go is such a huge lesson. And I think we've all had to go through that as entrepreneurs, with all the ups and downs that come along with it. Oh, yeah. I'd love to take it back. You're originally from Evanston, Illinois. And in your bio here, you say you went from waiting tables, pumping gas, and selling speakers out of the back of a van. You actually were one of those guys that did that. I've heard of them. And got on to creating several multimillion-dollar companies from scratch. You've co-starred in an award-winning film, The Keeper of the Keys, and now on to, best-selling books. So where did you get this drive and passion to succeed? Did you always have this even as a kid?
I think it's always been there. I mean, I know there are people who say that, you can teach entrepreneurship and you can teach people how to want to be business owners, but I just don't think that's true. I mean, I think you're either naturally wired as an entrepreneur or you're not. And just really hard, I think, to teach the entrepreneurial instinct. Maybe it's possible, and maybe there are folks out there who've been able to do it. I think you can learn certain skills, but I just don't think that as an instinctual part of who you are is something that can be taught. So for me, I've always been wired as an entrepreneur. I mean, it's in the DNA. As I could spend a lifetime in denial about it, but it's there. For me, it's there. And and frankly, that's probably worked to my detriment. From the standpoint of I'm not going to sit here and say that there probably haven't been other opportunities where I could have gone to work for a company and made a lot more money than I've made as an entrepreneur. I mean, that's the reality. But I do think at the end of the day here, as I look back on my career of starting out with a rake in my hands and going door to door and trying to rake leaves, or a snow shovel and trying to shovel sidewalks and driveways, to opening up my own nightclub when I was 19 and launching on CompuServe's electronic mall in 93, and all the fun things that I've done over the years. It's pretty hard to deny that I'm just wired to try to scrape a couple of dimes together and make a quarter out of it and see what happens.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you're touching on that piece of entrepreneurship, which, that it really almost has to be in your blood, in your DNA. And I, recently discovered more about my father being an entrepreneur when he was a younger man. And that helped me realize that, okay, this must be where I got it. It's got to be in my DNA somewhere, because it is that kind of thing where it is on many levels a choice to take this path. But from my perspective, it's almost like I can't see doing life any other way. Like I am so driven to create things and succeed on my own and make them work. And I think you have to have that drive and that desire to do something like that, because if you don't have it, I mean, there are just so many pitfalls along the way that if you don't have sort of the long-term fuel and fire for being an entrepreneur, then it's probably going to be even harder than it is as someone that has the drive and excitement for it. So I do think you're right. I think it has to be in the DNA.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And look, don't get me wrong. It's just, I just know what the trials and tribulations and the brain damage is that you incur as an entrepreneur, and you have to be wired in a certain way to want to get up off of the mat and just keep getting pummeled, because very, very few people are able to build an Amazon, if you will, right? It just doesn't happen. So for every Jeff Bezos who builds an Amazon, there's 99 million other entrepreneurs who go bankrupt or have to close their doors, right? So it just takes a certain type of person to want to continually get up off of that mat and just keep getting pummeled.
Can you give us an example of one of those times where you had a really challenging moment and how you were resilient, how you got back up?
Sure. I wish there were less stories to share, but I'll choose one. So the company that we launched on CompuServe's electronic mall in 93, which originally started as a catalog company in 91, was called Liquor by Wire. So we would do worldwide gift delivery of wine and champagne, spirits, gift baskets. And that was actually a very small piece of the family business. My grandfather had started Foremost Liquor Stores in Chicago back in the late 1930s. And in the 70s, my mom, after my parents got divorced, went to work with my grandfather. And then after I got done with the club, I went to work with my mom. And there was this very small piece of the company. I mean, we were literally doing maybe one order a day with this Liquor by Wire thing. But I thought it held a lot of potential because it was basically like FTD is for flowers. So we would have a local retailer deliver whatever that item was, whether it was wine or champagne, spirits, et cetera. And so I thought I could focus on that, and thought there was a pretty good opportunity there. And so I did. So much so that in 94, we ended up selling off the other pieces of the business just to focus on liquor by wire. And when the opportunity arose to acquire the liquor.com domain in 98, we thought that was worth the risk. I mean, it was a lot of money at the time in the scheme of things. And in hindsight, it really wasn't a lot of money because it was $7,500. But it was one of those things where it was still a stretch, and we had to stretch to do it, but we did, and it helped. I mean, it really did help immensely, and it helped us to get to millions of dollars in revenue, and things really started to take off. And we thought, look, it's 1999. Ideas on a napkin are now getting funded by these venture capital companies. Here we are, great business. All the heavy lifting is done. Let's raise some venture capital, take this thing public, and we'll all live happily ever after. And being blinded by the light, which is ostensibly what happened. We were blinded by the dot-com light. We followed the advice of Wall Street and the investment bankers that we brought on to basically sign away our management rights to the company so that we could bring in CEO and CFO and CTO and WTF and all these, lettered saviors that really didn't matter in the scheme of things, but we were convinced that that was the right way to do it. And so we did exactly that and signed away our management rights to the company. And in March of 2000, we had the S-1 filed and we were ready to go public. And of course, that was the beginning of the end for NASDAQ there. And everything imploded. We couldn't get out. The bubble burst. And my hands were completely tied because we had signed away, as I said, the management rights to the company. So hands are tied, and they ended up, let's just say, not really knowing what they were doing. And I walked away from the company about 6 months later. And so within a matter of months, I walked away from the company that I'd spent 9 years building, even walked away from the domain, which I had in my own name, but walked away from the domain as well. And, that was a herder because March of 2000, everything imploded. August of 2000, I'm out of the company that I had started. My mom stayed on for a little while longer, and then she eventually left and the company folded. And, it was one of those moments where I've really got to just pick my chin up off the floor here and figure out what I'm going to do, because I've got a wife and, kid, and I've got to keep the bread on the table and the lights on and the roof over the head. So I had to do exactly that, and ended up getting into real estate development because that was the next big thing after the dot-com world. And ended up doing about 50 odd million in real estate development over the course of those years. And it just, you live and you learn. And by happenstance, I reclaimed the liquor.com domain in 2006 and ended up bringing a group on to run that company starting in 2009. And as of this recording, we're in talks right now to sell the company. So we'll see what happens.
Amazing. Well, it's such a journey, and there's so many ups and downs, and I thank you for sharing some of those with us. And I know that had to sting.
Yeah, it did. I mean, definitely stung. But at the same token, you just can't rest on your laurels. You got to keep going. And the interesting middle piece of that story there is, after I reclaimed the domain in 2006, I put it up for sale and actually sold it to a guy who was willing to pay $4.25 million just for the domain. And he made the first few payments and then bailed on the rest. So I kept the money and I kept the domain.
And there you have it. Sometimes good things come out of the bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Amazing. Well, and then now your current venture with, this mission, you talk about your core message being that we're each born with an inherent blueprint that we must heed in order to make an inordinate difference in both our lives and the lives of others. And you talk so much about your what, and you have this New York Times bestselling book about it. Can you expand a little bit on how you came into this territory and this new evolution of your own career path?
Yeah, it's one of those things that I've struggled with for most of my adult life, which is, how am I naturally wired to excel, and what is it that they really should be doing with this entrepreneurial spirit, if you will, that I have. And so it led me to all sorts of different modalities like Myers-Briggs and what color's your parachute and, strengths finders and so on. And all of those modalities really just left me with more questions than answers. And I knew there had to be an easier way to really try to figure out what one can do to really put that fire in their soul and jump out of bed with that strategic abandon, if you will, as I say every single day. But the solutions that I was looking at again weren't providing me with answers. So that's where I started putting pen to paper to try to create my own framework, something that could really help people hit the ground running and give them something that they could actually leverage. Because when you look at what color is your parachutes and those sort of things, I mean, not knocking them, they have their place, but conversations like if you walk into a room, and there's four different, let's just say there's four different, groups of people there, a group of people talking about business and a group of people talking about sports and a group of people talking about, I don't know, spirituality and whatnot, and like which corner of the room would you want to go into to have a conversation? Like all I'm thinking is, where's the door and how do I get out of this freaking room? So it's like, it just kind of useless stuff. It doesn't really tell me what I can do to get started today with actually helping people or making money or, whatever. Right. So that was the kind of the genesis for creating the What is Your What framework, which is really creating something that I could use. And in Authorland, they say you write the book that you most need. And I had been teaching about business and doing some things with groups of people at that point. And it really began to make sense to work with those people to help them answer the same sort of questions that I was answering. Because without that foundation in place, it's really hard to move forward with clarity. And so after working with those various groups of people for an extended period of time, it just this What is Your What framework became so very clear that once you can understand what your core gift is, which for some of us, it'll be teaching, others it'll be healing, others it'll be communicating or enrolling or protecting or whatever it might be. Once you understand what your core gift is, and then you have clarity around the primary vehicle that you will use to share that gift, and then the people that you're most compelled to serve, well, now you can actually start doing something with that, and you can go out tomorrow and start serving those people that you're most compelled to serve in the way that you want to serve them, leveraging the gift that you got. And so that's the What is Your What framework, is the combination of the gift, the vehicle, and the people. And, frankly, it's kind of like a tripod. If you know what your gift and your vehicle is, but you don't know who the people are that you're most compelled to serve, that doesn't work. And if you know who you're compelled to serve and you know what your gift is, but you don't know how to serve them, that doesn't work either. And then, of course, you can split it 6 ways from Sunday. But at the end of the day, if you're clear on what your gift, your vehicle, and your people are, it's a pretty powerful equation to leverage.
Amazing. So this now, is that what you're teaching in your courses as well?
Look, it all begins with being able to answer that core question of what is your what? And without being able to answer that question, it's really hard to do anything else, at least certainly from a business perspective or from a professional perspective. And so, yeah, I mean, if people have no clarity on what their what is, then sure, we can, through the book, What is Your What? Or through the Reinvention Workshop online course, they can absolutely gain clarity on what that is. But my real expertise, having built 4 multi-million-dollar businesses over the years and being one of the few coaches to actually help other coaches and authors and speakers and holistic practitioners and business owners and so on, being one of the few who does this and has actually built businesses outside of the coaching industry, I bring a pretty unique perspective to the table. So my work and what people typically pay me for is more along the lines of helping them to share and monetize what it is that they're truly compelled to do.
And how do people do that with you? Is it through your online workshops, or how do you help people most?
So yeah, it's definitely through online teachings. We've got online courses. We've got of late, I've been jumping pretty heavily into the podcast world. So we've got a program called Profiting from Podcasts, which teaches people how to land coveted appearances on the podcast they most want to appear on, and then how to monetize the visibility that those shows create. I've got a program called Closing from the Stage, which teaches people how to take people from not knowing who you are to pulling out their wallets and investing with you in 90 minutes or less. And we've got our New Media Summit, which is one of my most favorite events that I've ever done. We're actually doing our 5th event here coming up. And so the New Media Summit gives 150 attendees the opportunity to meet and pitch from center stage 40 top podcasters and clarify who they are and what they do, of course. And then they literally get booked on the spot. So we teach people how to leverage and monetize the power of new media at the New Media Summit. But the real kicker is, again, every attendee takes center stage to pitch the 40 podcasters that we have there. And we have a 100% track record of people leaving with bookings in hand. So you got that. And then we've got our Icon Maker program, which is a year-long program where we provide guidance and accountability and done-for-you services like launching their podcast, creating their online course, building their funnel, et cetera.
Amazing. And do you also have, I believe, is it Reinvention Radio is another show that you do?
Yeah, so we've actually got 2 podcasts right now. So we've got Reinvention Radio, and I've been doing that podcast since 2009, off and on, mostly on now since 2015. And then Beyond 8 Figures is our newest podcast, and that one features entrepreneurs who have either exited from their business for more than $10 million or currently run businesses that gross more than $10 million annually. And we grill them until they share their strategies and techniques and shortcuts for starting and scaling, and in some cases exiting from that business.
And do you have any, out of all of the shows that you're doing and having guests come on, do you have any recent favorite or maybe ever favorite guests that have appeared that you can tell us about and what you learned from them?
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting, right? So the guests that we've had on run the gamut from people that you may have heard of, like Brian Smith, who started Ugg Boots, and Reed Tracy, who has been instrumental in the growth of Hay House Publishing over the years, to we've had billionaires on the show, people who are in real estate development, and then just not so glamorous types of industries. I mean, people who sell printer supplies, and people who sell furniture, and like you never know where success is going to come from. And it's definitely been an interesting trek of sitting down with many, many different entrepreneurs. But I will say that, reality for me is there's a couple that really do stand out. I mean, we had Roland Frazier on not too long ago, and Roland is instrumental in building a number of different businesses, not the least of which is the Traffic and Conversion Conference that so many people are very familiar with, and digital marketer and whatnot, but he does a lot of different things. And what I found so interesting about our conversation is how he is really able to acquire and shift into many different markets, many different industries, and acquire many different businesses without coming out of pocket to do so. And so anything that is generated off of those businesses, of course, the ROI is exponential. And he just brought a really interesting take to the table on how one can do that. And, a lot of us think that we have to just start businesses from scratch. And he had a completely different perspective, which is, let's not create a new wheel. Let's just paint this wheel a different color and give that a roll.
That's so cool. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about the Media Summit that you created. How long have you been doing this?
Yeah, so the New Media Summit is something that we started in September of 2017. And so we've done 4 of them, and we've got our 5th one coming up here shortly. And we've got 2 more on the books for 2020, March of 2020 and September of 2020. And it's a really powerful event. It is life changing and it is business changing. So much of what we do is help people not only, of course, get booked on podcasts, but really gain clarity on how to be their most authentic self, right? So that when they do appear on podcasts, they develop rapport with the audience. So that's a big part of what we do. But more importantly, we help them really articulate who they are and what they do in a very clear and concise manner. And it's amazing how many people struggle with just doing that. Because the God's honest truth is that if you struggle to pitch us as a podcaster, why you would be a really good guest for our show and why you should come on before someone else who may share similar expertise, if you struggle to articulate that to us, I guarantee you those struggles translate and are corollary to the same struggles that your prospects have about understanding why they should invest in relevant products, programs, and services. So that exercise of creating the media one sheet, of being able to get a 1-minute pitch down, of being able to just really have clarity on what their profit path is and why they're going on shows and how they're going to monetize the visibility that they generate, completely shifts their thinking around their business and completely shifts the dynamic of how they talk about and present what it is that they do.
Yeah, and I love that you're talking about this because obviously coming from a PR lens and background, that is so important in terms of how we want to be perceived. I mean, your public relations ultimately is how you're perceived in the public eye. So being able to, as you say, package and present yourself and pitch yourself in a way to anybody is really key because, if people can't get who you are and what you do and who you serve in a really quick, easy, and digestible way, then, you're probably leaving a lot of money on the table, so to speak. And the people that you actually could be helping don't even know that you're the person that could help them.
Yeah. And I think that the big wake up call for most of the attendees at the New Media Summit is they become very, very clear on the fact that the main business that they're in, and you can appreciate this given your background, but the main business that any owner is in isn't even really the business of what it is that they do or what it is that they sell. They are in the visibility business, period. Because if you don't create visibility for your business, you will not generate leads. And if you do not generate leads, you can't possibly have meaningful conversations with prospects. And if you can't have meaningful conversations with prospects, you will generate no revenue, period, end story. And so I think that in of itself becomes a huge wake-up call for people because so many business owners focus on the business and rightly so. I mean, you obviously need to have high-quality products, programs, and services. But with the assumption that that's a given, it then becomes this huge wake-up call of, oh God, I guess I really am in the visibility business because if people don't know we exist and we're sort of out there as the world's best kept secret, it may not be tomorrow, may not be next month, it may not be next year, but at some point you're going to cease to be in business.
Yeah. And that's, I love that you're talking about the visibility. Obviously, that's a big piece of, this show and what we do in my community. And you're so right. And you are just completely encompassing that vision of getting visible and impacting and changing the world with your message so that you can help the people out there that you are meant to serve. So I love that you're not only doing that so you're a living example of it, but you're also spreading that light and support and help to all of these other people that are coming to you through all your different avenues of the podcasting and the courses and this new media summit and teaching people how important that is. So And we talk a lot about, I love that you also talk about the what for what you do. And, a lot of times in my community, we're talking about the why also being so important, because having, to always having that to go back to and remember and stay in that vision of why you're doing what it is you're doing. So I feel like, we're two peas in a pod here. We're speaking the same language. I love it. And, I'd really love to hear more, just a little bit about like, what lights you up the most out of all of these things that you do? What lights you up the most and why?
Yeah, I will say that I'm a lifelong ham. I love the stage. I played drums for a number of years, and then I DJ'd in clubs, and then I actually opened up my own nightclub when I was 19. So I've just always been very, very comfortable on stage. Radio has kind of been a holy grail for me, which is why I got into the podcasting world pretty early, because it's almost like it is like having a worldwide radio station, right? I mean, anyone, anywhere can listen to your program at any time, as long as they have connectivity and they can get access to wherever your shows are hosted. So center stage for me with a microphone in hand, whether it's hosting a podcast and sitting down with the people like we do on Beyond Eight Figures and Reinvention Radio, or it is literally on a physical stage where it's either my own event or it is someone else's event. Definitely something that puts fire in my soul, for sure. I love entertaining. I love teaching. I love helping. And I love enlightening, right? I mean, giving people access to information they didn't have before or didn't think about, or think about things in a new way is very empowering for me. And I will say that probably what I enjoy most is what so many people hate, right? It's like the two things that people hate the most, which is public speaking and selling. The two things that people just absolutely loathe. And so I love those two things. I love even combining the two, which is going into a room full of people who have never heard of me before. And it's always the most humbling part of my presentation, where I ask, how many of you guys have heard of me before I took this, foot on the stage? And in most of the rooms that I speak in, it's going to be 80 to 90% of the room that has never heard of me before. And so being able to take folks who I have zero rapport with, and really just understanding the psychology behind effective presentations, and what exactly needs to happen during your 60 minutes or 75 minutes or 90 minutes on stage in order for those folks to come to the natural conclusion that they are, that you are someone that they want to work with. It's a skill that I have honed over the years, but there is nothing more exciting to me than having the right message land in the right ears at the right time, and watching 35 to 40% of a highly aligned audience move out of their seats to the back of the room to enroll in whatever that relevant offering is that I'm putting forth.
When you say an aligned room, do you mean aligned with you or aligned together, or where is that alignment?
So the alignment comes from the standpoint of if I'm selling, and so the offer that I would be putting forth is something that can help them in their business, which is typically what I do, then it needs to be a room full of business owners, right? Whether they're coaches or authors or speakers or holistic practitioners or small business owners, entrepreneurs, et cetera. So if I walked into a room of let's just say, more of a spiritual room, and people are looking to elevate their consciousness, I'll do okay, but it's not what I would call an aligned room.
Got it. And that's, going back to what you're talking about with knowing your what, and that is the people that want what you have to offer, the people you can serve best. So that makes a lot of sense. You got to be in the right room with the right people. And this is all just so insightful. We have a lot of people in this community too that are either speakers or wanting to speak on stages. So absolutely, this is some great advice that is going to be helping them. And I'd love to hear from you. I love to ask my guests if you could go back in time and give a younger version of yourself some advice. How old would you be, and what advice would it be?
Yeah, I mean, the advice is pretty simple, which is just hold on to assets, because whatever the short-term gain is that you might realize by selling something oftentimes is going to pale in comparison to what the long-term benefits and long-term gain could be. From the standpoint of it takes a lot of time and energy and resources to attain an asset, typically, whatever that asset is. So in my case with liquor.com, what I should have done is I should have kept the domain, but I should have leased it to the current company, as an example, that I'm in partnership with now. And so rather than waiting for a payday 9 years later, and reality is I don't know if I'll even see a dime off of this exit, because when all said and done with the investors that we brought in and everything trickling down, I don't know if I'll even see a dime off of it, to be honest with you. So that's certainly something I would have told my younger self when I was able to reclaim that domain, for sure. And even with real estate, riding the ebbs and the flows of the real estate market. And some people say that we're in line here for another pretty heavy hit, and that could certainly be the case. But even so, just riding out the trend there, the wave of dealing with the ups and downs and the trials and the tribulations, renegotiating your terms with the bank or doing whatever it is that you need to do, picking up any sort of asset requires a lot of your life, right, and maintaining that asset. So I think that's certainly one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, for sure.
Great advice. Thank you for that one. And I would love to know also how people can get in touch with you. I think you have also an incredible gift that I've used before that you want to share with everybody else. Can you tell us a little bit more about how they can get your gift, how they can find you, your courses?
Mm-hmm. So I'd certainly recommend starting with the discussion around podcasting, because I'm a huge fan of the medium, as I hope has become clear by now. I mean, I'm all in with an event and my own shows and so on and so forth, right? So big fan of podcasting, big fan of generating all of the leads and revenue you really need with zero out-of-pocket spend. Because, I mean, just like now, right, appearing on this show, you're not charging me to be on this show. And there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of other shows just like this in Reinvention Radio and Beyond Eight Figures, where we don't charge our guests to be on those shows. So every lead that is generated, every dollar that comes in from the sale of a subsequent product, program, or service, or coming to the event, et cetera, I mean, really, when you come right down to it, it's an exponential ROI on marketing, right, on your marketing efforts. So in this case, outside of a bit of my time, there's no hard cost involved. So that ROI is impossible to calculate because it's exponential. So I'm a big fan, and I walk the talk. I mean, over the last 3 years, I've actually been a guest myself on over 500 podcasts. And it's really the only marketing that I do. And I encourage people to do so as well. No matter what business you are in, no matter how niche you are, there are shows that are looking for guests just like you. And of course, my goal is to teach you how to land those appearances and how to monetize the visibility that podcasting creates. So step one, I would say, is let's just start with getting the ultimate directory of podcasters in your hand. And we've done a lot of the work for you because we put together this directory of 670 top podcasters. And it's broken down by category. We give you their name, their photo, description of their show, and we even go so far as to give you their email address so you don't have to do any of the work. So yeah, we'd love to get that in people's hands. And I'll say that of all the marketing strategies that I've leveraged over the years, nothing is more powerful than appearing on today's top podcast. So you can grab a free copy of the Ultimate Directory at myultimatedirectory.com. So that's the Ultimate Directory of Podcasters, 670 leading podcasters, detailed contact information there. And you can get that at myultimatedirectory.com, and that'll get you into my world. And then you'll hear about other things that are going on. And we promise not to hit your inbox too much there, but at least you'll have a sense of what we're up to.
Yeah, I mean, that's such an invaluable gift, because I often have people asking me, like, how can I get on podcasts? That is something we talk a lot about in my community. So other than, doing your research and hitting the pavement, so to speak, of figuring out what are the shows, how to reach them, all of that, like having a concise list in one place is incredible. So we appreciate you for putting that together and providing it. So everyone go ahead and grab your copy of that, myultimatedirectory.com. We'll also include the link in the show notes. And then what is your best website or the best way for people to reach out to you directly?
I would say, you can certainly go to steveolsher.com, but I would say, honestly, just listen into either Reinvention Radio or Beyond Eight Figures. Both shows will absolutely just get you into my world. And if you can survive those shows and you still like who I am, then then we can talk and we can play. But take a listen to the shows, listen, learn from the guests, hang out with me for a while and my co-hosts as well. And if you still love me and you still want to hang out after that, then sure, steveolsher.com would probably be the next best place to go.
Beautiful. Well, I can't thank you enough for being here today and imparting so much of your life journey and wisdom and career path. And, you're truly an example of how people can get visibility out there in the world and how it can take your career to the next level. And I love that you're doing it as an example of how it works and you're helping others do it as well. So any last parting thoughts for our listeners today?
I would just simply say this, which is, we've talked a lot about the What is Your What framework, and not to send you to too many places, but we do actually give away a free copy of the entire New York Times bestseller at whatisyourwhat.com. So if you're curious about how to discover what your what is, you're more than welcome to go there and grab a free copy of that book. But I'll simply say this, which is, my teaching, my firm belief is that you are the solution to someone else's problem. And there are people who are literally praying for you to show up in their lives right now. And I believe that it's your obligation to discover what your what is and do whatever you can to reach those people and help them in the singular way that only you can. And once they find you and you come into their lives, then they can, let's just get them off of their knees so they can stop praying, and then let's get them reaching into their wallet so they can start paying to invest in whatever those relevant products, programs, or services are that you have that are, that certainly represent the solution to their problems. So no reason to succumb to life as a starving artist simply because you're compelled to draw. Why shouldn't you get paid extraordinarily well for what comes as naturally to you as breathing? And I'm just a firm believer, as I said, that you're the solution to someone else's problem, and do whatever you can do to reach them.
Oh, beautifully said. Thank you so much, Steve. We so appreciate your wisdom and your words today. And we hope you'll come back and keep us updated on what's going on with you in the future. And we wish you the best of luck at your upcoming events. And thanks again for being here.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today for the Shine Strategy Podcast. I invite you to join me at shineinsiders.com for a free masterclass where you can get more inspiration and strategies to get visible and change the world. Your voice matters. Please subscribe, rate, and share this show so we can continue to grow on this journey together. Until the next one, it's Heather Burgett, your Shine Strategist, signing off.